all these activities take part in different parts of the body. Firstly, information about the environment around you travels from the sensors, things like your eyes and your nose and your fingertips and the skin of your feet, through what are called the sensory pathways. They travel along, almost like highways within the body, from the source of the sensation to the cortex of your brain. When information is sent out from the brain to your muscles and to the glands in your body, they are sent along motor pathways, so that we have sensory pathways coming in, motor pathways coming out. Now, when those messages come into the brain and the brain has to decide which messages to send out, that all occurs in what we call neurosubcenters in the brain. Neurosubcenters are where decisions are made, so we know a little bit more about what a nerve cell looks like. It's important for you to understand how the information passes from one cell to the next. So if you think of it being like a highway, going from, say, your nose to your brain, the smell coming in, what if the messages are passed along chains of neurons or chains of nerve cells? Each neuron has its own stored energy, and we call that stored energy the neuron's resting potential. When that energy is released, it is called the action potential. So we have resting potential when it's stored, action potential when it's released. In order for a nerve cell to release its information, there must be a chemical change. Now, if we talk about having two cells in a row along this chain with cell A and cell B, a chemical change in the axon of cell A affects the somas, the soma and the dendrites of cell B, because in cell B, its dendrites are almost touching cell A, and cell A's dendrites are almost touching the soma of cell B. When this chemical change comes from the axon in cell A, it causes neuron B to release its energy, and the energy travels down the cell body of cell B to the dendrites, and those dendrites are touching cell C, and cell C stimulates cell D, and so on and so on and so on. We call this neuron firing. It's like a gun firing, and it affects each cell. Neurons can fire slowly or quickly. Now, I've said a couple of times that the dendrites don't actually touch the other cell body. There's a small space between the axon and the dendrites, between the soma and the dendrites, and that space we call the synapse. So the synapse is found in the space between the axon and the dendrites. Now, in that space, filling up the synapse is a fluid, and it's a fluid filled with chemicals. We call these chemicals neurotransmitters. So neurotransmitters we can think of as stimulating chemicals which are released by the axon. They are released from the axon into the synapse. Now, the number of neurotransmitters in the synapse determines how fast the nerve will fire. So, if there are a lot of neurotransmitters in the synapse, the nerve will fire very quickly. If there aren't very many, the nerve will fire very slowly. Which brings me to my final topic in this essay, which is the various means by which neurofiring can be increased or decreased. Now, we've said it's the number of neurotransmitters in the synapse, but there are certain chemicals in the body which can affect how many neurotransmitters are found in the synapse between each cell. One very, very important one, which I want to focus on today, is drugs. Drugs can increase or decrease the rate of neurofiring. They can affect this, for example, in the sensory pathways, which are paths along which the messages come from the outside of the body into the brain, from senses to the brain. For example, drugs can affect the sensory pathways by affecting how we experience the world. It might be that the input comes in too fast into our brain or too slowly. For example, when you take cold medicine, you might feel that the world around you is really foggy and you're moving very slowly and everything doesn't seem as clear as usual. Well, that's an example of how drugs can affect the sensory pathways by giving you input too slowly. They can also affect the motor pathways, which affect the messages going to the muscles. For example, if one drinks a lot of alcohol, one might have difficulty making his or her muscles move the way you would normally move them because the messages are not coming as quickly. Again, the messages are slowing down. The neurofiring is slowing down, and the person is having difficulty with their motor pathways. And finally, the third area in which drugs can affect neurofiring is in the neurosubcenters where internal activities take place. Drugs can affect the brain's processing and decision-making. For example, a drug like cocaine can cause the brain activity to take place much faster than usual. Decisions are made faster. Often people who take cocaine experience the sensation of being very much in control of their environment, being able to work very quickly, being very aware of everything that's going on around them, and being able to make decisions very quickly. Another drug which has the opposite effect is marijuana, which slows down the activity of the brain substantially, and the person experiences reality in a very, very different, slow way. So these are some examples of how neurofiring can be increased or decreased. As you continue to read about this topic in readings 2 and 3, you will learn more about how drugs and other chemicals affect neurotransmitters, neurofiring. This is the end of the lecture. You now have 5 minutes to go back and review your work.
Okay, so how many people understood that? Yes, it's very confusing, isn't it? Sometimes the topics are very scientific like this. It doesn't matter if you understood it. As long as you got some of the keywords down, that's your goal, okay? I don't know what dendrites and axons and those words are. You don't need to really, okay? So we'll go through the answers together. So let's go back to number 1. So what is the topic? What do you guys choose? Excellent. The topic is the third one down, nervous system. Number 2, what is another word for nerve cell? Neuron. Good. Neuron. And like I said, don't worry about spelling too much. If it's close, they'll give you the point. If they read it and it sounds similar, they'll give you the point. Okay? Question number 3, what is the major purpose of the individual nerve cell? Perfect. To pass information from one part of the body to another. And you might have an answer that's not exactly this, it's similar, that's fine. Okay? It doesn't have to be these exact words, as long as it's the same idea. Question 4, in the diagram. So there's one that goes up, one that goes like this, and then there's a double arrow like this. What was the top line? Pointing to, good, soma. The middle? Very good. So the bottom one must be? Good, dendrites. Okay, any questions about 1, 2, 3, or 4? All right. Question 5, what are the 3 main functions of living systems? Good. Bring the information in, making decisions, producing information, and producing information. Excellent. Okay? So it's basically bringing information into the body. Okay? Another word you could use was input. That would be fine. Yeah, get. Yeah, anything that means the same. The next one was deciding. What to do with the information. Anything like that would be okay. And the last one? Is to produce information. Or to give information. Output. Or output, exactly. Any of those would be good answers that you would get full marks for. So it's coming in, deciding what to do with it, and then putting it out. Those are the 3 things. Yeah? No. No. In this one, it doesn't matter the order. Any order would be fine as long as you have the ideas. Yeah. Number 6. Where do the following neural activities take place in the body? So, 6.1, the first one, I heard it. Someone said it? Almost. Sensory. Did anyone get that? Sensory pathways for full marks. So that's the place in the body where information comes into the cortex. It goes on something called sensory pathways. The second one. Anyone hear this one? Motor pathways. What's this one? And the third one? Good. Yeah. Neuro subsensory is the answer. So these ones are a little more difficult to hear because he was talking about the whole paragraph. There are 3 points out of a total of 32 points. So if you miss them, don't worry about it. Skip to the next question, okay? Number 7. Take notes as the lecture describes how messages are passed from one neuron to the next. So this is 6 points. Your goal was to get 6 different ideas down. I'll write down the ideas, and you can see how similar yours were. Okay, so messages are passed along chains of nerves. That was one idea, that messages are passed along chains of nerves or along nerve cells. Another one is that neurons have stored energy. Neurons have stored energy. And another one that you could have written, same, would have gotten you a point, is this is called resting potential. So either of those would be okay for a point. Next one, when energy is released, we call it action potential. So if you had found or heard resting potential and heard action potential, you would get 2 points there. Another idea is that energy is released when there is chemical change. Okay, so before I flip the paper, messages passed along chains of nerves. Neurons have stored energy, also called resting potential. When energy is released, it's called action potential. And energy is released when there is a chemical change. Again, if you had some of these words down, you would get half points for them. So if you didn't have everything, that's okay, you still get half. Those are 4 of the possible answers. Does anyone have tape? I think bringing it. I can tape the answers up on the board if you guys want. I'll leave them up here for later if you want to come back and check them. Another idea he mentioned is that changes in axon A affect B, and B affects C, and C affects D. Okay, so that's another thing that would get you a point. And this is called neuron firing. Excellent. Neuron firing. So those were the phrases or the ideas that you needed to write if you were going to get 6 out of 6. If you had some of those words, you'd get part marks. Okay, some of the ideas, you'd get part marks. All right, on to question number 8. Where is a synapse located? Can you take this one? Yes. Between the axon and the dendrites. It's located between the axon and dendrites. Number 9, what substance fills the synapse? Yes. Good. It's a fluid, like a liquid, and the fluid is filled with neurotransmitters. Okay, filled with neurotransmitters. Number 10, what are neurotransmitters? Hear this one? What are neurotransmitters? They are stimulating chemicals released by the axon. So if there's a few questions like this where you don't necessarily hear the answer, look at the questions and see, do any of these lead me to another question? For example, number 9, it asks us what substance fills the synapse? And our answer to number 9 is fluid of neurotransmitters. Number 10, what are the neurotransmitters? So even if you didn't hear number 9, if you read question 10, what are neurotransmitters? You can go back to question 9 and you can write neurotransmitters. Without fluid. You would get 1 point. So to get the 2 points, you had to have fluid of neurotransmitters. If you just had neurotransmitters, you'd get 1 out of 2 there. Yeah. Number 11. What determines the speed at which a nerve will fire? Can you hear this one? The speed. The answer is the number of neurotransmitters. So how many neurotransmitters? Okay, the number of or how many? Neurotransmitters. Oh, sorry, this isn't number 10, this is number 11. And the last one, number 12, again taking notes, this time about the means by which the rate of neural firing can be increased or decreased. What was the main thing he talked about here? Drugs. That's right, and the past. And he gave some examples, okay? So the main thing that they're looking for is that drugs either increase or decrease the rate of firing. That's the main answer that they want to see. The other things that they're going to look at are the examples to see what did you hear for examples. So some of the examples they gave were cold medicine. And what did it do? Did it slow it up, slow down, or speed up? Slow. Good, okay? So cold medicine slows down. And where it affects the sensory pathways. So if you were able to get example with this, you get a full mark. Or if you got the example with that, you would get a full point. Okay, you didn't have to have all 3. If you had 2 of those 3, that would be good. So that was one example. What was another example? Yeah, there was cocaine. And did cocaine speed up or slow down?
Speed up.
Speed up is the correct answer. And where is cocaine affected? Good, the brain. And it's called the neuro subcenter is the word that they used for the part of the brain. So it speeds things up in the brain, in the neuro subcenter. Again, if you had cocaine to speed up, you've got a full mark. Okay? Those are two examples. They gave two other examples. What else did you hear? Marijuana. And does it slow things down or speed things up? Slow. Good. And where in the brain? Not muscles, no. This is talking about the same thing as cocaine. Where did cocaine affect? Okay. Good. Neuro subcenter. Okay, so it slows things down. So cocaine affects the neuro subcenter, but it speeds it up. Marijuana slows it down. And then the last example that they gave was alcohol. Slow or speed? Yes, this one also slows things down. And this one it's slowing the muscles. Okay. Or another word they used was motor pathways. That would be okay as well. So this is out of 6 points. That first idea that drugs increase or decrease the rate of firing, that's the most important of the ideas, okay? And then they were looking at, could you get the example with one detail? An example with one detail is what they were looking for there. So to get 6 points, you had to have all 4 examples with one detail. Any questions that you want to ask about the listening? The listening is more difficult than the reading, in my opinion, because they go quite quickly in the listening. So your goal is to get half of the questions right, and then get more than half of the questions right in the reading. And then that'll average out. Do you think you got maybe 50%? Yeah, that's good. That's your goal. That's what you want to get in the listening, is get a 50. The speaking is quite easy. Most students do very well in the speaking. The reading, once you learn the strategies and the skills, it's not too bad. And the writing is not too bad. So the listening is often the most difficult part. So don't worry if you feel like, I didn't understand that. It's okay. I don't really know what he was talking about either. Okay? It's very scientific.